This is Mickey Loomis here, GM of the Saints.
How you doing?
Good, how are you, man?
Good, been waiting on you.
Yeah, we have. It's been a long wait, man.
No, for sure.
We're going to take you with our next pick right here, man.
Yeah. Yes, sir, let's be legendary.
But you're going to have to wait a little bit longer, man.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Ready to go!
What does that mean?
Hey, is this Shedeur? Hey, this is Mickey Loomis here, the GM of the New Orleans Saints. How you doing? This is Mickey Loomis here, GM of the Saints.
How you doing?
Good, how are you, man?
Good, been waiting on you.
Yeah, we have. It's been a long wait, man. We're gonna take you with our next pick right here, man.
Let's be legendary.
Hey, but you're gonna have to wait a little bit longer, man. Sorry about that.
Oh my God! He bought it! Oh.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So we got to talk about the pro-blackity blacks and white liberals as well, too. I mean, this has now basically become a political thing because if you are liberal, for whatever reason, you think that what is happening to Shedeur Sanders and Deion Sanders, his father, being embarrassed by the NFL because Shedeur Sanders, as of the making of this video, has not been drafted yet, even though a lot of people said that Shedeur Sanders is a first-round talent and that he is a top-5 quarterback. He's been passed over.
The collusion right now by the NFL to not draft Shedeur Sanders is the same collusion you saw to not allow Colin Kaepernick to sign with an NFL team. Because guess what? When the good old boys are left to their own devices, they're going to hold a grudge. Regardless of how good Shedeur is, and make no mistake, some people had him high as the 6th player on the draft board. The 6th player.
I just want to say that Shedeur Sanders falling into the 4th round is insane. How? Some of these quarterbacks that have been taken before Shedeur Sanders is...
I have to be honest. This Shedeur Sanders conversation is pissing me off. Like, badly. Because it's such a good example of how little people actually understand white supremacy and racism, and yet somehow everyone thinks that they are experts in white supremacy. And what I've seen a lot in relation to Shedeur is this idea of, well, he's so egotistical, we got to humble him. Well, that's interesting, because I don't see the same narrative about white quarterbacks. I've seen that actually be something that's a positive, right? Oh, they have edge to them. We want our quarterbacks to have edge. So there's that. But largely, again, the idea of needing to humble or break down a black person is racist. It's racist, right? The idea that you want to dilute an unapologetic young black man who has bravado, who, again, has deep confidence, sometimes maybe erring on arrogance, but that you feel like you need to humble, and not just humble, but now humiliate him. A top 10 Heisman candidate. It's white supremacy, right? You have a bunch of team owners, right? Largely white men, colluding to break down a young black man. Oh yeah, no. We're gonna teach this boy a lesson. That is racism. That is absolutely racism. And when people bringing up things like, oh, well, you know, other black quarterbacks have been drafted, other black players have been drafted. Yes, it's a largely black league that is also a racist league, right? Did Colin Kaepernick not happen?
Okay, now, the reason why he's being passed over is obvious, and it has absolutely nothing to do with racism. I'm going to explain why he's being passed over. It's pretty obvious if you just use some basic critical thinking, but the pro-blackity blacks and the white liberals, they don't like critical thinking, right? It's much easier to boo-hoo, whine, and cry racism instead of critical thinking. So if you are a pro-blackity black, yeah, you're not going to like this video, okay? Because it's going to have critical thinking, logic, and facts, things that pro-blackity blacks really don't like, okay? But again, they are taking to the internet to basically try to claim that Shedeur Sanders, the son of Deion Sanders, who played quarterback for Colorado, who for all intents and purposes was born with a silver spoon in his mouth because his daddy is a millionaire, multimillionaire NFL legend, somehow is a victim of racism. Again, because NFL teams are not drafting him where the race hustlers believe that he should be drafted. Again, this is what black people experience as modern day racism. You guys remember Roland Martin boohoo whined and cried about racism because some random white guy asked him, was he a fan or an athlete because he was wearing his college paraphernalia out in public, and he started boohoo whining and crying. This is the type of racism that black people have to deal with, right? Again, this is the type of stuff that we're talking about here, right? Again, you know black folks got it pretty good in this country when they're boohoo whining and crying racism because an entitled Nepo baby is not getting what he wants. Okay, I'm not saying Shedeur Sanders cannot be an NFL starter, but he's simply not that good to warrant NFL teams drafting him in the first round, considering all the baggage that he comes with. Again, apparently this concept is a very complicated and hard thing for pro blacks to understand. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. Who knows? By the time you guys see this video, he may be drafted. But again, he didn't go in the top 3 rounds, and people boohoo whining and crying racism. Okay, this person says Shedeur Sanders is being punished for being a black, truly talented Nepo baby. This never happens to Nepo babies of the white community. Even mediocrity doesn't stop their moves. Black NFL team ownership is a must. Yeah, so again, the pro-blackity blacks, apparently they are advocates of nepotism, okay, and also on top of that, racism, right? This is what they love. Uppity Negroes are frowned upon and their confidence is unacceptable, but white mediocrity is acceptable, acknowledged, and embraced. Why is there not 100% black-owned NFL team franchise in 2025 with so many black entertainers and athletes who are multimillionaires and billionaires? You know what's so funny about this, right, is that you have some people who are claiming that, see, this is why black people need their own NFL, right? We need to pool our money together and just start our own league. And I'm like, silly rabbit, right? You really believe that black people can pool together enough money to start their own NFL and actually run it in a right way, okay, without running into the ground? Yeah, you know, I got my doubts, right? I have my doubts about whether or not that's actually possible. But again, you have these tweets going super viral. I'm not a Shedeur Sanders fan, but what just happened is straight up racism, bro. We have Stephen A. Simp, who's the biggest race hustler on television, right? On sports television. He says, someone just texted me this message and they are absolutely correct. Quote, this is a bad look for the NFL. This feels like Kaepernick level collusion. All of the hard work the NFL league office puts in to eradicate these kinds of perceptions only to turn around and watch as the owners look like they're colluding, messing up everything. What has been done to Shedeur will outshine everything else in this draft. We'll never believe this is just about talent evaluation again. Luther Campbell, he is calling for justice for Shedeur, right? Because apparently what happened here is injustice. Watching what they're doing to Shedeur Sanders is heartbreaking. No matter how talented, how prepared, how excellent you are, they still try to erase you if you don't fit their box. Stay strong, young king. We see you. Hashtag justice for Shedeur. Yo, the victimhood mindset for these people is crazy, okay? I know a lot of people are looking at the pro-black sideways right now like, this is unbelievable. You people are really crying racism right now, right? You're really crying racism when a vast majority of the NFL players that are being drafted are black, but yeah, you're boohoo whining crying racism over one guy not being drafted where you think he should be drafted. Now, we're going to talk about the real reasons for why Shedeur Sanders isn't being drafted, okay? Because, again, the pro-blacks do not seem to have the intelligence to comprehend the fact that NFL teams do not want this type of behavior from their quarterback. Like, for example, Shedeur Sanders doesn't seem to exhibit the best sportsmanship.
You that same talking shit on Instagram. You talking on Instagram.
All right, keep talking about business.
You can't fuck with me.
So, you know, people will look at this and say, well, it isn't a big deal that he refused to shake his opponent's hand, right? Which, again, is like, that's just basic sportsmanship, right? This is something everybody learned growing up playing football that, hey, win or lose, as long as nothing crazy happened on the field, right? I think there's some exceptions, but you shake your opponent's hand. And when you're talking about drafting a quarterback, right, the leader of the team, there's certain types of intangibles that you are looking for, okay? And if the talent is not good enough to justify questionable intangibles, okay, character, attitude, the things that come along with Shedeur Sanders, like his father, who, again, they're all about flashiness, showtime, right, drama, this type of stuff. NFL teams, owners don't want to deal with. They just don't want to deal with it. And Shedeur showed doing his interviews, right, and leading up into the NFL draft that he felt entitled.
Mike, it was not a shock within the NFL and team buildings when Shedeur Sanders did not go in the first round. I would fairly tell you it is a surprise that he is still on the board at the start of day 3. Philosophically, some teams feel like if you are drafting at the quarterback position specifically, if you think you've got a starter, you take him in round 1. If you're drafting somebody to be your backup, you don't want to do that until day 3. I spoke last night with one general manager who is considering taking Shedeur Sanders today. He pointed back all the way to March 2024 and something that Shedeur's father, Deion Sanders, said on a podcast talking about both Shedeur and Travis Hunter, saying that if they are drafted by a team that they don't want to go to, he's going to step in and pull an Eli, meaning force those players to not actually go to that team and try to get them traded. Throughout the pre-draft process, Shedeur Sanders very much proceeded as if he was dictating to clubs where he was going to go rather than how the draft works, which is the other way around. And there were a bunch of opportunities missed at the various checkpoints through that pre-draft process. Go all the way back to All-Star season. Instead of going to the Senior Bowl, he went to the East-West Shrine Bowl in his backyard in Dallas. Despite an NFL memo saying if you go to these All-Star games, you have to practice, Shedeur chose not to. At the Combine, it is now well documented some of his formal interviews did not go well. One assistant coach told me in all his years, it was the worst formal interview he'd ever been through. People said that Shedeur was trying to dictate how he wanted things to go and made them feel small. Even at the Pro Day, the entire Big 12 have an event in Dallas. Shedeur was there, but did not work out. He had a showcase instead in Colorado. All of which is to say, for a player who had a variety of questions both about the talent level, how he would fit into an NFL system, how he would adjust from his play style in college, but also about the potential culture shock of, for the first time, playing for someone who is not his father. There were opportunities that Shedeur Sanders could have taken there. He seemed to feel as if he was in an elite category where he could choose the few teams he wanted to go to. Now some of those very same teams that might be considering taking Shedeur today didn't get those opportunities to answer their questions.
What teams want on these visits, and we can debate, whether they should, but what they want is to hear a player that is coachable, that is willing to accept information, that is willing to adapt when they're being asked to adapt. He didn't communicate that on a lot of these visits. Again, we could debate this, but I'm just telling you that that's what these teams got, and that's what Tom is communicating here as well.
Yeah, so again, it's very simple, right? It's very simple. Shedeur Sanders, maybe he's a first-round talent, but he's not the type of guy, in my opinion, that can take a team that won 2 games and make them a playoff contender. He's not that type of guy, right? We know this because his career at Colorado, while it was good, they never really beat any really, really, really good teams. Okay, every time Colorado played a good team, they were thoroughly outmatched, and Shedeur looked mediocre at times. And yes, I am aware of the fact that the Colorado team was not all that good. They didn't have that much talent, even though Shedeur Sanders did have the number 2 overall pick, Travis Hunter, at wide receiver and cornerback, right? Offense and defense. So I'm just saying, they had some talent. They didn't have a lot of talent, but they had some talent. Regardless, Shedeur's talent was not good enough to make them consistently competitive with ranked college football teams, right? With other good teams, right? They couldn't consistently compete because they weren't that good, right? His talent wasn't good enough to make the team competitive versus good teams. Even though I have seen him make throws where I have just stepped back and said, wow, this dude can play at the NFL. So again, I'm not knocking the talent. I just don't think he's as talented as people believe or as he believes, right? Talented enough where, again, you had all of that stuff that they just went over in that clip I just showed you guys. Okay, you talking about a guy that was basically projecting where he wanted to go, trying to dictate which teams could draft him, which is a huge no-no. He was not coming to NFL workouts. He decided not to go to the combine because, again, he thought he was so good. Well, I don't need to throw, right? I don't need to throw. I don't need to prove myself, okay? I mean, the entitlement was off the charts. I mean, you talk about also Deion Sanders, his father, okay? His father is somebody that's been involved in his life from day one. Okay, has always been involved. You think that Deion Sanders is going to back away when his son gets to the NFL? No coach, no organization wants Deion Sanders breathing down their neck and all of the drama, all of the things that come along with that. Again, this stuff is not hard. It's not hard to grasp, okay? If you just do a little bit of critical thinking, there are so many reasons why this is happening that has absolutely nothing to do with Shedeur Sanders being black, okay? It has nothing to do with it. I am sorry, but I do not think that being unapologetically black is being arrogant, cocky, wearing flashy jewelry, okay? All of these things that have come with Shedeur Sanders and Deion Sanders, I do not think that is called being unapologetically black, okay? Because every black person is not like that. In fact, you have a lot of black players that were drafted in the NFL in the first round that are not getting any praise, that are not getting the attention they deserve because the pro-blacks are so obsessed with Shedeur Sanders and Deion Sanders, right? Like, for example, Cam Ward, who was drafted #1 overall by the Tennessee Titans out of Miami. This guy has an absolutely amazing underdog story as a high school player that was overlooked by everybody, okay? And he basically got no real good offers to go to any good schools, okay? Goes to a very small school and he has to transfer a few times until he eventually works his way to Miami and becoming a #1 overall pick. Now, this is the type of story of hard work, resilience, and adversity that the so-called pro-blacks, if they actually were so pro-black, they should be celebrating this. This is what we really should be talking about. This kid has an amazing story that's not being talked about, that's being overlooked because people are so obsessed with racism and victimhood rather than the hard work and resiliency that goes into a story like Cam Ward's, right? That equals success. This guy became a #1 overall pick from humble beginnings. It's the exact type of story that high school players dream of that were good in high school, but they felt like they were overlooked, right? Like, oh, this college overlooked me. I didn't get any scholarship offers, even though, they felt talented. And then they worked their way up going to some small school. Like, that's the type of story that, again, I know the type of players in high school that dreamed of having a story like Cam Ward's, even though statistically speaking, it wasn't going to happen. But for him, it did happen, right? So, again, it's stories like this that I think are so much more productive to share, right? And to talk about and to celebrate. But for whatever reason, these people who, again, claim to be so pro-black, they're only concerned about black victimhood. That's all they're concerned about. That's all they care about. But yeah, people like me, well, you're a sellout, bro. I guarantee you, I'm going to have low IQ individuals in the comment section of this video with the racist emojis, right? You know what they call black conservatives that don't agree with them, right? We all know the racial slurs, okay? They'll be saying that, okay? While at the same time, again, I'm just saying, right, that I think it's more productive for black people to focus on positive success stories, right? Like Cam Ward is a black quarterback that went #1 overall. Why are we not talking about that? Is this story not important? Is Shedeur Sanders' story more important? Like, again, a kid, for all intents and purposes, again, Nepo baby, okay, has had a silver spoon in his mouth since the day he was born. Everything given to him by his father, okay? Privileged, the definition of privileged kid. They're more focused on his victimhood than the success of a kid who overcame actual adversity, okay, to become the #1 overall pick. They're more obsessed with the victimhood of a privileged black kid. This is why the black community is at the bottom. This is why we're not going anywhere, especially with these so-called pro-blacks as the leaders. They're not pro-black. They're pro-democrat. They're pro-victimhood. That's what they're pro. And it's stuff like this that really is exactly what I'm talking about. For as insignificant as it seems, we're sitting on the internet arguing about, is it racist for, again, a privileged black kid who is overrated, okay, in his own mind and in the mind of the NFL, clearly, is it racist? Is he some type of victim because he's not being drafted? in the first round, or because the NFL decided that they needed to humble him, right? A black man, right? The NFL saying that they need to humble a black man is racist. And it's like, well, Shedeur Sanders is not bigger than the Shield, right? That's the reality here. He's not bigger than the NFL. And any player that basically tries to outshine the Shield without having the talent to carry the Shield on his back, because Shedeur Sanders does not have that type of talent, yeah, the NFL has a way of humbling you. It has happened to a lot of players like Johnny Manziel, Tim Tebow, Cam Newton, right? Cam Newton was drafted by the Panthers despite having some of the same concerns that Shedeur has, right? Some of the same concerns Cam Newton had, but his talent outshined that. And when the talent was no longer enough to justify his behavior, right, the distraction that comes along with Cam Newton, he got kicked out of the league. It happens all the time. Black, white, whatever. Colin Kaepernick, it happened to him too. It wasn't racism. The distraction of Colin Kaepernick was not enough to justify keeping him in the league. But apparently, as a black person, you're a sellout if you acknowledge the reality and the truth that this is not racism, right? If you don't want to engage in the race hustle, right, fake victimhood, apparently that makes you a sellout. I guess Mike Tomlin is a sellout too, right? Because Mike Tomlin, black coach, need a quarterback, has passed up on Shedeur Sanders, right? Is he not black enough, right? Is he selling out too? Okay. Again, I want the pro-blacks. Please tell me, what do you think about Mike Tomlin, right? What do you think? You think he's also a part of the white supremacy as well too? Okay, just say it. Shedeur, regardless of whether or not he gets drafted, he's gonna be fine. He's still gonna be rich, right? He can go and be a streamer, right? He'll be a streamer and he'll get millions of dollars from doing that. If he got to go get it out the mud by going back to college or going to the UFL, then hey, it is what it is, right? Some people are saying that he may have to go back to college, right? That's how bad it is for him right now. The kid has a bright future regardless, okay? But again, some type of victim, according to, again, these pro-blacks. And they wonder why the black community doesn't go anywhere, because you're too focused on victimhood. But see, again, that's the funny part about them calling me a sellout. It's like, well, yeah, if I really wanted to make money, I could preach black victimhood. That's the easiest way to make money, right? I would make so much money off these pro-blacks who believe anything, by the way, right? Anything you tell them, okay? As long as you got the race angle to it, as long as you're taking a pro-black angle, they don't care about the truth, right? So I wouldn't have to tell the truth, right? I could just lie, right? Which is the easy thing to do, okay? And then, I can make the white liberals feel guilty, and I can make a ton of money doing that, right? When you talk about the selling out here, it is much easier to make money off of fake black victimhood than it is off of a success story where you have humble beginnings, somebody who was not born with a silver spoon in their mouth, that did it the right way and became successful. That's boring. You can't race hustle off of that, right? You can't divide America with that story. In fact, you might bring the country together, which is bad for the race hustlers, right? That's bad for their business model. You might inspire some black people, right? You might uplift some black folks, right? Which also bad for their business model as well too, right? Again, you guys understand what's going on here? This is the real grift, right? This is the real grift. But again, a lot of people are just too stupid to see it. I'm at the point now where I think that these race hustlers, they're trying to appeal to people who are just at the bottom when it comes to intelligence, right? That is what they do. And this is why they use race. You don't need logic. You don't need facts. You don't need to critically think. All you need to do is say, no, it must be because you're black. Right? Even though it makes zero sense, right? It doesn't need to make sense, okay? Because in their world, everything happens because of race, right? Cause and effect has everything to do with race. Nothing to do with your own actions and behavior, right? Your beliefs, your culture, none of that stuff matters, okay? It's just skin color and race for them. And that is just a very simple an ignorant way to view life, conflict, adversity, right? Problem solving, right? It is just not a very intelligent way to live life, right? We're not dealing with sophisticated individuals here, right? I mean, that is something that I think I've realized over the past few months, okay? With a lot of these racially charged stories, I've just come to grips with the reality that these are not sophisticated people, okay? And again, the race hustlers know that the people they're trying to appeal to are not sophisticated And this is, again, the real grift, right? Like, this is what's happening here, right? That's what's going on here, right? This is bottom of the barrel type of stuff. And that's just the reality, okay? That's just the reality. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.